Hey, and welcome to day number 15. And in this video, I share the progress of the last 4 days with you guys. As you can see, I'm currently working on the chassis and the base frame. And in case you are new to my channel, I am trying to rebuild this World War II vehicle entirely in Fusion 360 without any previous knowledge of the application. So I have basically opened Fusion for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and I'm documenting and recording my personal learning progress since then. So if you watch the videos from day 1 to the current day, then I'm gonna share a lot of tips and tricks and a lot of the basics in Fusion 360 with you so that you can build something as complex as this on your own. Now the cool thing here is that Fusion does not differentiate between an assembly file and a part or a component file like many other CAD applications do. So this means that you start a new scene the same way all the time by going to File and create a new design, and then it's up to you to decide how you use the scene. This one, for instance, contains a lot of external parts, and you can tell that these components refer to an external file by this link icon. So this means I haven't created them in the scene. Ignore these 5 at the bottom here because it's the suspension unit that I have mirrored in the scene, but I'm gonna replace these guys with external components later on. You can simply do this by opening up the data panel and then go to the folder with the corresponding design in it, and you can right click on the part and select insert into current design. You can also simply drag and drop it to the viewport. Then the move and copy command pops up, and this lets you place the object accordingly. So I don't want to rotate it, I would like to move it in place like so. And for this reason I have also a canvas in the scene that helps me to find the right location for this part. Same goes for the top view. And as soon as I'm done, I can simply confirm the operation, and then the new part gets appended to the browser tree at the very bottom. Unfortunately, you are not able to group these components or to move them around. So this means that whatever comes last is the last one in the list. Now let me close the data panel again and hit undo a couple of times to delete the wheel. And then I'm also gonna hide the tracks so that we can see the chassis and the parts a little bit easier. And I have not only placed them in the scene, but I have also added some joints. So this means that a few parts are already movable. For instance, the front drive sprocket here that is connected with a simple axis in between. So this area here is really simplified, and I'm gonna detail it a little bit more later on. But for now, the main focus is on the parts that are visible from the outside. So the same also goes for the return rollers to keep the chain or the track links in place. So this one can be moved, also this one over here, and also the last one that is connected with an axis with the one on the other side. So if you move this one, also the other one rotates accordingly, like so. And the same principle applies to the idler wheels at the very back. So they also help to keep the track chain in place. I'm gonna revert the position for all the parts. And of course also the boogie suspension unit parts are movable. So for instance, I can move this up and down. Unfortunately, the coil does not move because simulating the movement of this part is very tricky, or maybe not even possible in Fusion 360. At least I haven't found a solution yet for this one. And I can also move these elements in the middle here. Again, the coil does not move accordingly, but that really doesn't matter as long as these parts work. And also the one on the rear side of the vehicle works the same way. This one is connected with an axis here, so I can, for instance, also move this axis and the pin and the plate with the wheels on it move accordingly. So let's revert the position again to set everything back to its initial state. Now the idea here is to place everything in this assembly step by step. When we take a look at the data panel and the file structure, then you can see that I have created different folders for different areas. For instance, the track folder contains all of the component parts for the tracks, and the wheels folder currently has only 2 files or 2 versions of a wheel in it. I'm going to create the wheel suspension next week. In the chassis folder is only 1 file. That's the base frame that I have also opened here. And even if it consists of several different components, it's basically one big unmovable part that allows me to mount all of the other parts or components to it. And the difficult thing here is actually not to create or build this structure, but to get an idea of how everything has to be assembled later on based on the reference images and the miniature model that I have available. And fortunately, the miniature model is really detailed and very well made, so it provides a lot of information on how these parts are made and what they look like. So the guys who have created the miniature model did an excellent job, and without it, it would be a lot more difficult to come up with decent and good looking results. And so that's the part that takes the most amount of time. It's actually not the building part, but the time it takes to find out where all of the components are, how they look, what they do, and how to build them in a way that they serve the entire vehicle as a whole later on. For this one, I have taken some pictures of the miniature model and placed them as canvases in the scene, like this one here for instance, that allowed me to get the outline shapes of the mounting plate right. And I have constructed everything in a way that I can always go back to an early stage of the design and make some adjustments. So for instance, I can select the mounting plate, make sure that the timeline is on the very left before I double click on the initial sketch to enter sketch mode. And here I can simply move these sketch lines over to the right a little bit. Then I exit the sketch and give Fusion a few seconds to calculate all of the parts. You can see this in the right hand bottom corner. And as soon as this is done, and in case everything works properly, I should end up with an updated design without any error messages in the timeline. So everything looks pretty good. And this is absolutely amazing because, and always in case that you build the structure the right way, it allows you to go back to an early stage of the design, make some adjustments, and have an updated model within a few seconds. And from my experience, I can tell that some planning is necessary and that it also takes some practice to build the parts in a way that updating is possible in the first place. Besides completing a few elements here, all that's left to do is to add little details, and by details I really talk about nuts, bolts and rivets. And even if they do not contribute to the function of the vehicle, they still contribute a lot to the overall look and feel of the parts. And as you can see here, for these nuts and bolts, I have actually really drawn a sketch, made some extrusions, and this of course is not an option if you are dealing with hundreds of rivets, for instance. For this reason, I'm going to use a function that is located in the Insert drop-down menu. It is called Insert Derive, and it lets you insert parts from another design as components, bodies, or sketches. And for this reason, let's open up the data panel. As you can see, I've already created an accessory folder here. This one will contain all of my little component parts that I'm gonna add at the final stage to improve the overall look and feel. And I have created a test scene here. And before I go to the Insert tab, I open up the Bodies folder, go to Insert, Insert Derive, select a different design. So I go for the first one here, click on Select, and as soon as I do this, Fusion opens up the design, as you can see here. Then I search for the Bodies folder, select the body, it is also selected in this box over here. Then I click on OK, and as soon as I do this, the scene gets closed again, and I have a new body inside my current design. So this one gets actually attached as a body, not as a component. And this little arrow icon over here tells me that the new item is still linked with the external reference. So this means if you are going to make any adjustments on the source file, also this one updates accordingly. And you can, of course, also break this link by right-clicking on the name, go down to break link, then you get prompted with this warning. That's fine, and now it is attached as an individual new body inside the bodies folder. Now to move this guy, you have basically two options. Unfortunately, it's not possible to simply select it and move it in the viewport, because this is only possible when you are dealing with components. But you can use the move and copy command. So I'll select the body first, bring up the move and copy command, and now I can move it and rotate it in place. But this is not the best way to do it. There's another method. So let me get rid of the move and copy command in the timeline. And then I use the align tool instead. That's available under modify, align. I have set a shortcut key because I use it that often. So bring up the align command, select the bottom face of the nut and the top face of the cylinder. I flip the nut, and then it sits perfectly on top of the cylinder. And at the same time, also an align icon gets appended to the timeline. So this means that when I now, for instance, adjust the extrude feature of the cylinder and make it a little bit thicker, also the nut follows accordingly. And you can now combine the align tool with the move tool. So let's keep it in the current position. Bring up the move and copy command again. I select the body, and then let's move it down a little bit. And I click on OK. And now it keeps this position even if I adjust the thickness of the cylinder. So let's set it back to 0.5 again. So it sits perfectly on the top face of the cylinder and in the position that is defined by the move and copy command. And now I can go to create pattern, circular pattern, bodies is selected. I select this body, the center axis of the cylinder as my main axis, and let's try something like 8. And then I can, of course, always adjust the items in the timeline. So for this one, I'm gonna double click on the move command again and move this guy a little bit closer to the edge, like so. Then I go and confirm the command, open up the circular pattern command one more time, and let's try here something else like 12. And again, it still follows the adjustments I make on the cylinder. So let's add a thickness of 3, and it updates accordingly. And if you want to get rid of all of these bodies in the body folder, you can always run the combine command, select every body from the first to the last one, confirm this, make sure that the operation is set to join, and then you end up with one solid body. And this is the procedure that I'm planning to do to add all of the little details to finalize the parts of the vehicle. Now, before I end today's video, I would like to show you a little trick on how to store or how to archive all of your files on your local workstation. As you know, in Fusion 360, everything gets saved or stored in the Autodesk cloud. This is great, but I prefer to have a copy of my files also stored on my local workstation from time to time. So in case something goes wrong with my account or something else happens, it's always a good feeling to have something stored on your hard drive. And of course you can do this by simply go to File, Export, and then you can export all of the elements in different file formats like IGS, for instance, or the Autodesk Fusion archive files, or you can export these parts as STLs. And this is not an option if you are dealing with models that consist of many different components. And for this reason, there is an add-in available on a GitHub page. It's this one here. It's the Project Archiver and it's created by Patrick Rainsbury. And besides the download link, you can also find a detailed installation description on the GitHub page. And once the add-in is installed, you can simply go to Tools, Add-ins, Scripts and Add-ins, and here it's located in the Add-in tab. It's the Project Archiver, and you run it by double-clicking on it. Then a new tab gets added to the main toolbar. And when you click on Archive, this little window pops up, and here you can choose the output folder, then a few different export types. I usually go for IGS and the original Fusion 360 file. Then I keep the document name and the folder structure, and then I also write the latest version of the files into the file name, and then you can simply click on OK. And once you do this, Fusion opens up all of the designs in the background, and it exports and stores a version on your local hard drive. This is it for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. Do not forget to subscribe. And in the next video, I will talk about the wheel suspension that I still have to create. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.